Slumpbuster, episode 43, to Dre's Haters on 3. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Slumpbuster. Quiet on the set, make sure my mic is on. Aris, Dre, and Juju dog diving towards the pylon. Go for two, so damn rude, recognize authority. Spitting tips for fantasy, no way you're outscoring me. Bold predictions with conviction every single day. Sports addiction, no restriction, kicking game like Pele. He's the greatest, what's the basis? Pick an athlete, let's debate this game. Outrageous trading places, sudden death, take 10 paces. Turn and shoot, boys the truth, Mamba mentality. Future greats take their place, dreams become reality. Low and outside, knocked it out the park. Your boy discovered fire like a rock with a spark. Refs acting like Neanderthals. Phantom flags, nothing calls. Heartbreak losses, tragic falls. Every week discuss it all. Settle in, listen up. Free your time like Andrew Luck. Show's about to start. I suggest you buckle up.
Dre's Haters.
Dre's Haters.
Alrighty, guys. Well, we are in for another episode. No guest this week, as it will just be myself, Dre, Aris, and C-Money, your loyal, your faithful Slumpbuster team to guide you through this episode. We were supposed to have a coverage of esports, but sadly it is postponed. Our guest is out there having a child. We have sadly not hit that point in our lives in our mid-20s, although I'm happy to provide the dad jokes in his absence. Now, Christian, you are probably the closest out of us here, as you are one of the few that is actually engaged. You do have a fur child, though. Tell us all about Groot, because we're trying to build a show together offhand. We're going off cuff at this point.
Okay, so Groot is actually in trouble today. He decided to eat my fiance's favorite slippers. Actually, no, not even slippers. Her favorite yoga slippers. So you can imagine yoga slippers. They're very pricey and very, very comfortable. And he decided to eat one. So he's in, excuse my language, deep shit.
C-Money, come on. We don't worry about language on this show. We're not Captain America. We're not telling people they can't say any GDs, no Fs, no 7 dirty words. We're about that life here.
So are yoga slippers the same as slippers, but just with the word yoga, kind of like how wedding photographers are just photographers that upsell for weddings? Is that kind of how those yoga slippers are?
Yeah, 100%. Yep, that's what it is. They just use it to upsell. So everybody that's all into yoga could just buy them and they could get their sales.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out, so do you actually wear them while you do yoga, or do you just wear them to yoga and then you take them off while you go through your yoga session?
Honestly, I've never even seen her wear them in yoga.
See, so like, why would you even get them?
Marissa just has a yoga mat.
Yoga.
Marissa just has a yoga mat that she stores in her closet and just looks at, so she can, like, it's out. Actually, no, it's out in a visible location. That way, that anyone that walks into the house could say, "Oh, you do yoga? I do yoga too." And it's a conversation starter. Now, actually, it looks like we have our 5th member of the Slumpbuster team, Mr. Bobby. Slumpbuster Bob is coming into the chat. So let me go ahead and welcome him into the show here. Let's see. Loading. This is Zoom after all, people. If you didn't know how we use what we record, most of the time we're not in the same place. And hey, Slumpbuster Bob, welcome in to the podcast. Looks like he's trying to figure out where he is. I mean, he's probably confused. I mean, I'm in San Francisco. Christian's in space here. It's a lot of variables going on. Dre? We started the show with, welcome to your haters. Do you have a message for the fans out there that seen it appropriate to basically consider you either the Skip Bayless of the show, the Stephen A. Smith of the show? I'm always the calm, composed Chris Broussard type that keeps this whole thing running.
I do love Chris Broussard, man, and so it sucks being compared to Skip and Stephen A, but at the same time, hey, they're the ones that bring in the viewers, right? Is you will always view and turn into Stephen A or Skip Bayless, no matter how much you hate them. I don't mind it. I love all our fans. Even if you hate me, I'm all cool with it.
Hate watching is a thing.
It is. It brings in more viewers. So if you hate me, good. Tune in.
A lot of the younger fans, a lot of the younger sports fans out there won't realize or even consider that you may hate Skip Bayless. You may hate Stephen A. But at one point, those two guys had a show together. I don't know. Did you like Skip when he was with Shannon more, or did you prefer him with Stephen A?
I did not see a whole lot of him when he was with Stephen A. I've mostly started watching more of Skip Bayless since he's been with Shannon. And I think Shannon is just freaking hilarious. And Shannon provides really good insight. Skip.
You know, though, I got to say, I hate Max Kellerman. I do. I think he's the worst thing. They were having an argument the other day, and I just kept thinking to myself, God, please don't let the show ever turn into that. You know, like, I get it. They're a popular tandem and everything, but Max Kellerman, Stephen A., when they go at it, it is the most annoying thing in the world. Like, seriously. Yeah. It's like, think of like a drill going in one ear and then a drill going right in the other one. Just, and they're meeting in the middle right there. That's exactly how those arguments go.
Max Kellerman's a fucking idiot, dude.
I was just about to get in here and say that we couldn't do one of those shows because we don't have a girl like mediator. Because I feel like all those shows, like most of them have a girl mediator just to calm everything down and put everybody back into their place.
Honestly, I kind of like how Colin Cowherd has his, where no one's yelling on top of each other and it's just like one person saying stuff.
Yeah, he's calm, collective. He's got that whole metaphor game, though, down. That is like one of those tools that I need to add into the whole tool belt there. Proper metaphor. Yeah. I mean, Dre had a good one last week when we were talking about, like, the Packers draft strategy was basically them ghosting Aaron Rodgers to pick up a new girl, Jordan Love. I thought that was
exactly.
I think that was a good metaphor.
It was inspired by Colin Cowherd. I mean, he's always talking about, you know, wives leaving you and divorcees and stuff like that. So I was like, hey, I'm going to channel my inner Colin and basically use that for what's happening to Aaron Rodgers.
Saying he has a lived experience. He's probably knows a thing or two. I think he has been divorced a time or two in his life. That's why his hair color keeps changing from gray to normal to gray to normal. Not to call out Colin, but I'm pretty sure when his hair was that bright brown last year that just looked like a doll's hair, probably a natural hair color, if we're being honest about it.
Nah, dude, I don't know what you're talking about. People's hair does it all the time.
It's like that old argument with Barry Bonds, like people's head expands 3 head sizes in their 40s. You know, I have my doubts. I at least have my speculation about that one. So, I mean, this show was originally supposed to be about esports here. Christian, do you have a hot take about esports? How did Get Off Your Video Game turn into one of the hottest sensations and one of the few sports that actually can participate right now given COVID?
Honestly, I would say dating back, it started from Quake, this old game that was made by the same studio that did Doom. So original story is that the programmer for Quake offered up his Ferrari in a tournament back in the day. This was like maybe 1996. So this guy, I forgot his name because it's so long ago. So this counted as the first esports event. This guy competed and he beat every player to win that Ferrari. So that counts as the first ever one. And what's crazy is that the programmer like supercharged the Ferrari. So it was pretty much illegal to even drive. And he just offered it up just to see like how many people would tune in and how many people would want to see a tournament like that. The guy ended up winning and he became the first ever esports champion. Now it's 2020 and esports is just booming. It's insane. I would believe in 2018, League of Legends, the championship tournament, had more viewership numbers than the Super Bowl and NBA Finals combined. It was in China. So they got a ton of viewers from China, from South Korea, the United States, everywhere. And pretty much the numbers were insane.
That's crazy, dude.
I don't know. Can we really trust that, though, for China to report their numbers correctly? We have seen some interesting numbers coming out there the last few weeks.
Yeah, they somehow instantly stopped coronavirus.
Yeah, exactly.
China would never lie to us.
2,000 cases for a population of 1 billion. Okay, seems legit. But, you know, yeah, that is crazy. Like, I don't know. As far as like esports go, like I said, it's one of the few things that are still able to go on right now. The MLB had their tournament event, MLB The Show. NASCAR, which we actually talked about on this show, had their own little virtual races. Kyle Larson, unfortunately, didn't help the ratings on that one. And then, of course, ESPN advertised the NBA 2K tournament. I got to say, though, I sat down and watched these. I don't feel like it's a good spectator sport. I can't get into it. I don't know if it's just me, but like it feels a lot like golf. There's some people that could sit in front of their TV and watch golf for hours. It just doesn't really do much for me to see them play the game. And it didn't even really do it for me, even with the fact that we don't have sports actively going on right now.
As a Overwatch player, I have to admit Overwatch League is actually pretty fun, especially when you figure out which owners there are. Like, for example, the Patriots owner owns the Boston team for Overwatch League. I did not know this. I found this out maybe a couple of weeks ago. J-Lo is actually co-owner of Los Angeles Valiant. I think that's the name. Yeah, she's co-owner. Mark Cuban owns the Dallas team. And a Lakers player owns one of the biggest teams in LA for League of Legends. So there is a lot of money in it, and there's a lot of viewership. But I don't know. For me, it depends on the game. Like League of Legends, I cannot watch League of Legends. It just looks like I don't know. It's that one's just hard to watch. Overwatch, I feel like, is a lot more fun because it's a first-person shooter. A lot of the players have quick reflexes, and of course, they play on PC with keyboard and mouse. So they're just insane. Those players, I don't know how they do it.
I just picture when you say Robert Kraft owns a team in his massage parlor where he has someone dressed up as like Diva, like walk in to, rub and tug.
Julian, please do not ruin Diva for me. Oh my God, it's my favorite character. Please don't ruin Diva for me.
Okay, fine. Name Robert Kraft's fantasy. Mercy? Are we talking, is he more of a Black Widow character? I don't know what Robert Kraft's play style is. I probably don't.
I would probably say.
What was that little Asian fighter from like Tekken, or what's the other fighting game? Mortal Kombat?
Chun-Li.
Probably that one, since he was at an Asian massage parlor.
I could definitely see Chun-Li.
That is true. Anything less would be cultural appropriation.
But what's crazy with esports is that right now, the biggest game just started, I would say, about 3 weeks ago. It's called Valorant. It's from the makers of League of Legends. And the way they handed this game out was pure genius. So on Twitch, if you make an account, you can watch different people on Twitch play the game. And if you watch, I would say at least an hour to 4 hours of them playing it, they gave you a beta code so you can play the game. It's the next biggest esports right now. One of the biggest Overwatch players just quit or just retired Overwatch League just to play that game. He was making about $100,000 a year. And I would say right now, he's going to be making so much more off Valorant. Bobby, I'm pretty sure you know Counter-Strike. It's like a lot like Counter-Strike.
I haven't played Counter-Strike. I played a lot of League of Legends, though.
Okay, so Counter-Strike, it's pretty much a 4v4 match. One team plants the bomb. The other team has to disarm the bomb or eliminate the other team. But the game is incredibly difficult to where you have to have quick reflexes and perfect aim to even win the match. So Valorant is a lot like Overwatch mixed with Counter-Strike. So Valorant right now, the numbers are just insane. It's been the #1 game on Twitch since day one. First day, they logged in over 1 million viewership hours. So that's just people watching the game. A lot of the big streamers are now playing it. A lot of them are now even signing deals to exclusively play it. A lot of ESPN just reported that so many teams already have got into full practice on the game because they already know it's going to be the next big esport. Esports, it's a crazy subject, man. I don't know if you guys know this, but esports, it's not like NFL or NBA or MLS. It's a lot like you have one esports team, for example, Cloud9. Cloud9 is just one team, but they have different sectors of teams that play different games. So they already have one that plays League of Legends, they have one that plays Counter-Strike, they have one that plays Valorant, they have one that plays Overwatch, and they have one that plays 2K. So imagine that's just one team. So imagine how many sub-teams there are just for that one. That's how they split up esports, just different sub-teams playing different games all the time.
Now, how many people per game? So you said there's like one section for 2K, one section for this game, so one section for that game. How many people do they have playing that game per section?
It varies. I think for Overwatch, they probably have about 10. For 2K, they won't have that much. I would say about maybe 5 players. League of Legends, I would say probably has a lot because there's more money in it. I would say they probably have about 15, maybe 4 are the actual starters and the rest are just on standby because you never know, like their best player could go out with anything could happen.
What throws me off is like, where is like this money generated to like pay these guys such large sums, and how much do like a lot of these guys actually make in a given salary for doing this? Because you can't just entirely rely on tournament pay, right? I mean, you have to make a salary outside of that to continue this lifestyle. Most of these guys will just literally do it as their full-time job. I get why traditional sports like the NFL, MLB, all those are doing well, because when you pack a stadium, charge $100 for admission per ticket, and then have a couple $1 billion TV deal, that's how you fund the league and keep it going. But with so many different variations on the sport, it's not like there's one esport. It's not like there's one specific game that every single person is playing. There's a lot of different subgroups in that. It kind of throws me off that you do see people still getting $1 million payouts from each of these, unless is there just one big parent company that's funding each one of them?
I would say it's mainly on ticket sales, because they do pack stadiums, that's for sure. You guys have to see the Call of Duty esports and how much those stadiums are packed. It's insane. And then on top of that, sponsorship deals, exclusivity deals. A lot of these guys get crazy deals, like maybe guaranteed $2 million or more. Twitch streamers like Ninja, they're saying anticipated from just him moving from Twitch to Mixer. They were saying that he probably got about 50 mil from Microsoft just to make that move. A lot of these guys, it's a lot of the big gaming companies that sponsor them. They pay them out. A lot of them do stream on Twitch. So just by logging in, they're getting money from ad sales. They're getting money from subscriptions. And then on top of that, a lot of them, if the next big game comes out, they get money just for exclusively playing that game for 2 weeks and just showing everybody hey, here's the next product. This is how it plays. It comes out in 2 weeks.
So, Christian, how much crossover would you say there is between traditional sports fans and esports fans?
See, that's a hard one, because a lot of traditional sports fans don't watch esports. It depends. I know a lot of the professional players do watch esports. A lot of them are actually interested in them, and a lot of them have invested. I know a lot of LA Lakers do invest. That is a hard one, because there is a big group of gamers that will exclusively watch these esports games. Like me, for example, I'll watch anything sports. I'll shoot if it comes to it. I'll even watch golf, but that probably won't last for a while. So I would say it just depends on the player. But what does help is that a lot of these teams do have a city based within the team. So you have one of the main teams that I support is Houston Outlaws. I only watch them because they're a Texas team. And I mean, I watched San Antonio Spurs. I watched Dallas Cowboys. I need another city team to watch within Texas. That's how I am. Yeah, it's crazy though how many viewers each esports gets. And then if you guys go on Twitch, that's just even crazier, how much money people donate and how many people subscribe.
Yeah, so C-Money, we're talking about the viewability and the watchability of esports. And a lot of times on Twitch, what I notice is it's always from the point of view of the player, which of course, that's where people are tuning in, is to see, hey, who's those really good players, right? And see what they're seeing. But when it comes to these big tournaments, do they have where you can maybe change up camera views if you're not actually playing the game, right? So part of what makes football so popular, or what makes basketball and all these other sports, is that they have total control of camera angles. You can, look down the sideline, or you could look right down the middle of the field, or whatever it is that you want to do. So is that component available in esports, or is it usually always, hey, you're only looking at one player screen or 2 player screen at a time?
So what's really cool about esports is that Overwatch League was actually the first to implement this. If you watch Overwatch League on ESPN, you're only going to watch what they want you to watch. But if you log in, I think it was Twitch that had the exclusivity deal. If you logged in on Twitch, you could actually change the camera angle. So if there's a player that you want to watch on Twitch, you could change it yourself and watch them. I think they even added some instant replays. So just in case a big event happens and you missed it, you can go back and watch it.
Interesting. I'm sure we'll reschedule with our guest that we missed out on down the line. So we'll have another broad discussion on esports and kind of the future moving forward on it. But, ultimately we are still a traditional sports show, and there is a couple sports headlines that we did decide probably be interesting to talk about right here. So Andy Dalton officially has been granted his release from the Cincinnati Bengals, saving the Cincinnati Bengals about $17 million in cap space. With that said, where does Dalton end up?
My biggest guess is going to be Jacksonville. Even though we were messing with Bob earlier saying that he's going to be the next quarterback of the Patriots, I feel like he probably would have been if we're going to have a normal offseason. But I don't see us having a normal offseason where, you're going to be in a team facility, you're going to be able to go through walkthroughs and stuff. It sounds like everything's going to be virtual, very little time with your team until probably the first week of preseason, maybe a couple weeks before then. So I'm going to say Jacksonville on that.
Bob, what are you thinking?
Dude, I don't know. I keep making all these predictions of what the Patriots are going to do and what's going to happen. And I just don't know anymore. I don't know what's happening. So he might end up with the Patriots. He might not.
Dre, the Steelers have talked about him. Do you think that that's a possible landing spot? Would you take him as your backup quarterback or even potential starting quarterback if Big Ben's not recovering well?
Honestly, I think that I would at this point. So the two places I would have said were the ones that were already mentioned, right, is New England or Jacksonville, but those are already taken. So now with the Steelers, right, we lost out on Jameis Winston, which was interesting because he was promised a more lucrative deal to sign with the Steelers, but he still chose to be a disciple under Drew Brees rather than get paid more, which is fine. I'm all for that. And so now we're stuck in the situation that we were in last year, and that all our hopes ride on is Big Ben healthy and still able to play at that elite level. I've had my questions about Andy Dalton in the past. I think, there was one fantasy football season where he really screwed me on the few games that I had him in. So I'm always bitter towards him. But if you actually look at his statistics and the teams he played with, he actually did a pretty decent job. So I am actually all in favor of it as long as he doesn't want starting quarterback money, right? Because I don't think he really will be a starting quarterback outside of maybe New England and Jacksonville. So as long as he's willing to accept backup money, I would be totally fine with having him right behind Ben.
To touch a little bit on the Jameis Winston deal. So, he decided to take less money to go to New Orleans as opposed to going to Pittsburgh. And it does make sense. When you look at New Orleans, their situation, you already have Drew Brees signed on to a deal with NBC, so we know where he's going post-retirement. And Big Ben versus Drew Brees in terms of how they've groomed and mentored guys behind them, it's complete apples and oranges. Big Ben was reportedly kind of a dick to Mason Rudolph. Maybe we can argue Mason Rudolph deserved it a little. We learned a little bit about Mason Rudolph in the years to come. As far as, you look at New Orleans with Teddy Bridgewater, I think the last couple of years that he's been with the Saints have been really good for him. Now he has a starting role with the Carolina Panthers. As far as Andy Dalton goes, a place that I threw out there in our little group chat the other day, I think he could be the backup quarterback in Dallas. Now, here's why I say that. We know that Dak is, in this contract dispute with the Cowboys trying to get $40 million. I don't think it's going to happen. I think he should settle at that $33 million number that I'm hearing thrown around. But either way, if he does decide to play hardball, if he does decide to hold out, which is always on the table, we know it hasn't really worked out for NFL players, i.e. Le'Veon Bell. But if he did, I think the Cowboys could sign Andy Dalton and be the most prepared for that situation, because I don't really believe in Cooper Rush that much. I know what Andy Dalton is. Andy Dalton is a capable quarterback when he has quality weapons around him. CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, Ezekiel Elliott, those are quality weapons, and if you put those around Andy Dalton, I think that's potentially a fringe playoff team. He's a former TCU quarterback as well. TCU just located in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Texas boy, bring him back to the good old Republic of Texas. And I think there's a lot of ways that fits. In terms of money, I think he knows that he can't ask for $17 million. I know people are connecting the dots hey, look, the Patriots have $17 million. I don't think it's a fit because everything that Bill's saying, he sold on Stidham. I don't know how to explain it, considering the only time we've seen Stidham on the field in a regular season game, he got pulled immediately to bring in Tom Brady to take the final few snaps. So that's a little concerning.
I think now that I think about it more, and I could be wrong because I've said I've been wrong about everything so far, I think him being so sure on Stidham might just be him saying that they're going to tank this year. There's no reason to pay someone money if they're not planning on winning this year anyway.
As far as tanking, though, do we believe that the Patriots are that bad? Because how deep can you really tank? If you're talking about Trevor Lawrence, you have to be number one. If you're talking about Justin Fields, you probably have to be number two. I don't think the Patriots are that bad. There's a lot of teams that are a lot worse than the Patriots right now. They're probably going to finish in those spots. When you consider their division, they're still probably better than the Jets. They're still probably better than the Dolphins. The only question mark is, are they better and able to compete with the Bills still? I mean, if they get mediocre quarterback play, they can survive if they're going to double down on the run game with James White, Sony Michel, and company. We never really know with Bill Belichick. It could be a different running back each week, but still, they're still a capable team. I mean, at best, I think they're maybe a 9-win team in my way too early predictions. At worst, maybe 6-10.
Yeah, and I think Bill is trying to bank on the fact that, like I said earlier, we're not going to have a normal offseason. So he brought in Hoyer, who's been in the offense before. Stidham knows the offense. It'd be hard for them to bring in a quarterback, learn the offense, not get a lot of reps, with the timing or the, route running or whatnot with the guys that they already have. So he's playing chess and everybody else is playing checkers because he's banking on the fact that it's going to be a weird offseason. He wants to make sure he has a quarterback that knows their system instead of bringing in a guy like Andy Dalton, Cam Newton, Joe Flacco, who would have to learn a whole new offense. The learning curve is going to be even greater this year because the offseason is going to be put off. They're saying probably even until October and playing a abbreviated schedule. So that's probably what he's banking on with, not bringing in any of these veteran guys for this season.
Brian Hoyer is an old favorite of Belichick, and he even led the Texans and Bill O'Brien to a playoff. We do have to remember that he is an old favorite there.
Yeah, and plus they're not paying him. The Colts are paying him this year, so they get him for free. So big plus for the Patriots.
Bargain bin Belichick, that's what you could consider with this one. And when I think about the Patriots, what expectations this season, he did say during the draft that it wasn't by design they didn't select a quarterback. So I'm wondering what they were expecting to happen during the draft. Were they targeting Easton? Were they targeting the Florida International quarterback? What went on that resulted in them not going? And who was it that they had their eyes on that they lost out on? That's a lot of question marks. Was his dog at the computer during that time? Was that what happened there?
So I heard some things about Jake Fromm because he got drafted by the Bills, I'm pretty sure, right?
Yeah,
he is the 5th round.
Mm-hmm.
I heard that they took him just because they didn't want the Patriots to take him.
That's your only gamesmanship right there. I mean, you do that. You keep him away from the Patriots
stuff, but
yeah, you keep him away from the Patriots for at least 4 years when you do that. And you do hear about that kind of stuff in sports, like, we might have to compete against this guy rather than having him in our locker room. Let's just go ahead and take him. Quite a few years ago, I remember the San Francisco Giants selected a guy off waiver wire strategically to keep him away from the team that was leading the division. So you do have to kind of consider strategy when these things happen.
Yeah, always playing chess instead of checkers. I love that quote. But yeah, or they could have been doing it because, maybe they're trying to groom him because they're not completely sold on Allen now. I mean, look what he did in the playoff game where they were up and then he just completely freaked out. So maybe that was the reason why they took him. Maybe it was because they were trying to keep him away from the Patriots. But, we'll never know unless we can talk to the GM or the coach.
You did mention Cam. I mean, Cam is still out there, and there's a lot of questions. What does he end up doing? I mean,
he's going to sign with somebody as soon as this opens up. I think people were just wary because they couldn't get their own doctors to look at him. They couldn't get their own training staff to evaluate him. They couldn't see him in person throwing the ball, running, because he did have that foot injury. But I think as soon as this opens up, he'll go sign to a team or he'll be that first guy signed whenever a quarterback goes down. That's what I'm going to assume happens with Cam this season.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it, too, has to do with his behavior with the media, right? And he is a little bit more eccentric than some other characters when it comes to football. And so I think people have sort of just steered away from him. And there's not too many quarterback needs at the moment. A lot of the teams that needed a quarterback, they answered that in their draft or in free agency. So we'll see. I'm sort of in the same boat as you, Aris. I think he probably won't be signed to a team until we see a quarterback get injured.
Normally I don't post the video feed to this, but Cris, I might just to put you on the spot as your head slowly drifts into the Lisa Ann cleavage right there. It's like a third. If you put your head a little bit more towards the middle, it might look like a third boob in there.
Well, she does run the fantasy football radio, so she has to deal with sports somehow.
That's true. I mean, we are looking for a replacement fantasy football host, so let's start hitting up in those. I'm kidding. All right. Well, as far as Cam goes, I hope he does get with like a team because he does have a lot of talent. I mean, if Andy Dalton, Nick Foles, and all these other guys are finding homes, I certainly think that Cam Newton could find a place. I mean, all these character questions are secondary to me when you consider that he's never really broken the law per se. I mean, there was that whole like laptop scandal in college.
The way he types should be illegal. That's all I'm saying.
That is true. That is like one of the hardest, one of the hardest people to read on Instagram with his caption game. It's just insane. What keyboard is he using?
I don't know.
How long did it take him to type that out?
Right?
I mean, seriously. Okay, well, if we had to take a bet, where does Cam end up? Anyone? Bueller.
That's a hard one. Let's go the Rams.
The Rams? I don't think so.
They get tired of Goff.
Yeah, but I mean, if they're tired of Goff, they're not going to sign Cam, and that's a lot of money to commit to the quarterback position in a year.
What about the Raiders?
I could see the Raiders, but they did go out there and acquire Marcus Mariota too. That's the one kind of like oddball in that situation, because they do have like two quarterbacks deep at this point. If they didn't acquire Mariota, then I would say that would be an ideal landing spot for him. People are throwing out Jacksonville. I think it would be a little unfair to Minshew with that one. But at the same, you're basically saying if you bring in a guy like Cam, Minshew, you're not winning this job.
I just don't know if Cam would want to go there, though. I think Cam is a prideful enough dude that there's no way he would sign in Jacksonville.
There's pride and then there's not playing. You sign a 1-year deal with any of these teams, you look good, that's going to set up your next contract. So at this point in the offseason, pride kind of goes out the window.
If he does throw his pride away, a good scheme fit at this point for a backup role would be Baltimore. Kind of fits his, zone read skill set, this type of offense that he likes to run. So if he is throwing his pride out and does want to sign a backup role instead of a starting role, Baltimore would be a good fit.
Well, unfortunately, he's been put in a position where he has to accept a backup role just because there's not enough starting jobs in the league. We have a quarterback surplus at this point. I still do throw out there that Los Angeles with the Chargers still could be in play because, again, Tyrod's not going to get it done, and I don't know how quick they're going to want to start Hrbek because Hrbek is going to be a bit of a project, but it does seem unlikely based off everything that Anthony Lynn has thrown out there. And we're just really waiting on a quarterback injury, I guess, with Cam, which is kind of ironic.
About Miami?
Fitzpatrick's good enough to get it done, and then they got Josh Rosen still on that roster too.
He's still there?
He's still there. He's still hanging around.
Maybe a backup role in Arizona.
Beats me what he's going to do. All right, guys. Well, you know what? With that said, we do have to take a brief second to stop to thank Manscaped.com. Now, Manscaped.com, we just coming off the draft. We saw some number 1 draft picks. We saw some new beginnings. Why not, give the undercarriage a new beginning. Give the grundle, the balls, the fleshy love bridge between a little bit of a new beginning. So fresh starts, promo code SLUMP, get 20% off plus free shipping and handling. Go ahead and type that into the promo code field. Manscaped is the home of the Lawnmower 3.0 with design precision cut technology to prevent any nicks or accidents down there. So when you've trimmed the bush, the tree stands taller. Now, Bobby, you haven't been on the show here in a minute. Any interesting manscaping stories? Come on.
Are you asking me about my fleshy man bridge?
Exactly. I am asking you about the fleshy man bridge. Do you keep that one clean, pristine? Is that area all up to code there? You are in a relationship. I know standards tend to drop when you do enter that field. But still, come on, because as we know, with barbershops closed, I'm already starting to see the fro up top here grow out here. So we got to keep everything fresh.
I might not be able to control this right now, but thanks to Manscaped, everything else is under control.
Okay, so it's not looking like the forest of Narnia down there. So that is remember, deforestation is the proper way to prevent forest fires, guys. Smokey Bear, New Mexico icon. originated from here. Only you can prevent forest fires, guys. Now, remember, promo code SLUMP, 20% off at manscaped.com to get great items like the Lawnmower 3.0, to get the Crop Preserver. Let's face it, you put deodorant under your armpits anyway. Why not cover up the smelliest, the rankest parts of your body? Go ahead and use the Crop Preserver. Keep that up to code as well. We also have the tote travel bag. All these great values. Manscaped.com, promo code SLUMP. Hit it up today. Get a fresh beginning. All right, guys. Well, thank you again to Manscaped. All right, let's see here. What other stuff do we got with the show coming up here?
Got a quick question. What was that, before we go on, I just want to go off on a little tangent. What was that terrible Adam Sandler movie where he was like fighting a dictator or something like that? And he was always talking about how
terrible Adam Sandler movie could kind of like describe his last 20 movies.
But it wasn't, I guess it was within the last one. But it was the one where he was fighting somebody, and then he was always talking about how his bush was so huge and everything.
You don't mess with the Zohan.
There you go, that one.
God,
I don't know why. You were talking about keeping it under control, and that popped up in my head for some reason.
His career Adam Sandler's career has just been a mess. I mean, he did do that Unkept Gems. I haven't seen it. I've heard good things. I mean, it had Kevin Garnett in there as well. So, I mean, a little Celtics love, but I don't know. Adam Sandler, I think he just needs to get purely into drama. The comedy movies aren't really doing it for him. At least it's because his humor hasn't really evolved since the 90s, I think.
According to Adam Sandler, we still have yet to see the worst from him because he wasn't nominated for Uncut Gems. So he threatened that he was going to now make the worst movie of all time.
What was the worst movie of all time? You know, we always talk about, like, what's your favorite sports movie on here? What's, like, the worst movie you guys have ever seen? I think I could go with movie 43. If you guys haven't seen movie 43, it is an awful time. Just move past it. That and like Human Centipede 2. Didn't think I'd bring that up on this show ever, but
they did not need to make a sequel to that.
That is a rough watch. That is, if you just want to leave a movie in a bad mood, you watch either one of those two. Those will do it for you.
I think the two worst movies I've ever seen have been the live action Avatar, The Last Airbender. That was
horrible.
Dude, I will not watch that ever in my life.
The remake of Red Dawn was pretty shit too.
I actually kind of like that one.
You like that?
Yeah. The one I was going to say, kind of go off of your Avatar, was that live action Dragon Ball movie that they made.
Oh my God. That was so bad. That was so bad. Like, you have Goku in high school? What the hell?
It was terrible.
Anyone that's listened to that show knows that Goku couldn't even graduate 5th grade if he wanted to. Like, oh my God. Just an embarrassment. Dre, come on. Like, what's your most embarrassing, worst movies you had the joy of seeing or the disjoy of seeing?
So there used to be this movie on Netflix. I don't know if it's still there anymore. I want to say that it was called Tire or something. But it was basically about this tire that just rolls around and like blows stuff up with its mind. It's the most awful movie there is. In fact, it's so bad. A lot of people like watching it just to see how bad it is.
It's one of those movies that you watch with friends just because you want to see how they react to it, just to kind of like get a feed on them. What's that movie that was so bad that it got a movie made out of it? The Room.
Is that the Jake Gyllenhaal one?
No. The Room with
the Disaster Artist.
What's
James Franco in it?
Yeah, what's the guy's original name?
Tommy Wiseau.
Tommy Wiseau. Oh my God! Like, so many mysteries to that one. Like, where did this guy get his fortune? Where is his accent from?
Is that the one with all the flowers? That was bringing around flowers or something like that?
I don't believe that was a big part of the movie, but like, you probably heard this impersonation here. I did not hit her. I did not. I did not. Oh, hi, Mark.
Oh, hi, Mark.
That one, yes.
You know, if you ever just want to confuse someone named Mark, you basically just go up to him. Oh, hi, Mark. Should we bring this show in? Should we kind of like get this back into like main focus? There were some other stuff that popped up this week. I mean, we showed it earlier in like, again, like the group chat and everything like that. So Bashaud, Breeland out there getting into trouble this week. You know, sometimes you see a lot of those and they could go either way. Like a lot of those are out of context. Based on what I saw, it looked like Bashaud Breeland was in the wrong with this one. He was trying to get back in his car. He was under arrest. Like, come on, guy, right? I can't be the only one that was like a little bit, but it's hard to say because some of these are just filmed out of context.
No, I agree. I don't always agree with the whole, hey, just listen to the cops blindly and aimlessly, because there are some times where I think there are some police officers, not all, but some are bad officers and they just have a power trip and they're power hungry. But in this case, he was obviously in the wrong. Like, there was, I believe, reports of marijuana in the vehicle, which is still illegal in the state that he is in. He also didn't have a license, right? So you're driving under the influence of something. You also don't have a license. And so therefore, the cops have the right to take you to jail. And if they tell you to get out of your car and put your hands behind your back, you basically have to comply and just listen to that. So I agree. He was in the wrong.
Have you guys ever looked up on YouTube sovereign citizen arrest tape? It's a crazy rabbit hole to go down. It's probably one of the most hilarious things. Basically, the whole idea behind like sovereign citizen is, I guess they don't identify as like an American citizen, so they don't have to follow traffic laws. They'll mention like, I'm not driving, I'm traveling, which means, like I can basically operate a vehicle doing whatever I want. And the cops pull them over and like, where's your license? And they're like, sir, I don't need a license to travel in my domicile. And it's like, yes, you do, because you're driving a motor vehicle. We all have to do it. Why are you exempt?
Yeah, no, something along this line that I think this is part of the bad thing when it comes to social media is now there's a whole lot of people that are not very educated that think they're all experts on everything. And so I'm like, what law degree do you have that you think that you can go around saying you're a sovereign citizen? Like, no, you're just a plain citizen of the United States and you're getting pulled over. Like, take the ticket.
The guy that's making a fortune right now, the guy that made sovereign citizen license plates, which are pretty much to a cop like, oh boy, I'm going to write a ticket today. If you're literally riding around with a sovereign ticket license plate on, it's like, yeah, you're basically asking the cop to pull you over. You're basically saying, I don't have a license on me. Send me to jail.
Yeah, the other people that are like that are the people that go outside of police stations in California and video record it, the like First Amendment rights people or whatever. They have nothing better to do with their lives other than go and bug cops, and then they're yelling at the cops because they ask them to leave and stop recording the police station. And they just fight for like 40 hours. Just, I can do it because it's my First Amendment right. Like, that's another rabbit hole to go down. I've done that one before too.
It's like in Bad Boys 2 with the KKK member that's like, I have my rights. And then Will Smith is like, you have the right to shut the fuck up.
Pretty much.
Another crazy one, I'm just going to give people like homework and stuff to do during quarantine. Watching like old To Catch a Predator like highlights. It's a dark subject, but some of these guys, when they get caught, it has to be one of the most hilarious things in the world. With Chris Hansen just comes in and drops the chat logs on them. He's like, so you basically said you want to bleep her in the bleep and bleep and bleep and bleep. And she says right here, she's 13. And the guy's, I don't know. I thought I was talking to someone who's 18.
That shit moment that comes over their face.
And some of these guys like bios too are just the most ridiculous things. Like one guy's like username was like generic white male, right? And he like in his things like, I'm old, but I'm built good. It's like, do you know, have you never talked to a real person in your life? Do you think this is how you pick up women? And specific, well, not even women. These are teenagers. Some of them will even like, seriously, guys, do yourself a favor. Look some of this stuff up. It's one of the most hilarious like YouTube compilations you could find. And you may even find like a favorite like Chris Hansen interaction because he is savage with it. He doesn't care whenever he like comes into the room. It's like there's one guy that walked in the house completely naked. And he just like hands him a towel and is like, you can take the towel with you too when you're done. And he knows the guy's going to get arrested and tackled the second he steps outside the door. So, that's a crazy one. I mean, kind of ties into it, like another thing too, like we're talking about as well. So, I mean, Telvin Smith got in trouble this week, guys, for not, I guess, carding at the door, basically. What do you guys make of that whole headline? Apparently, he was talking with a 17-year-old and got busted. And Telvin Smith, he just retired last year, so not a lot of people expected his name to pop up into the headlines.
How does that happen? Like, you're Telvin Smith. I guess you're not like a huge name, but were in the NFL for years. How do you end up with a 17-year-old? Don't you have like the pick of the women? You know what I mean?
You would think like you do have a certain like stature, a certain like level in the community. I mean, hell, there's even dating apps just for celebrities to pick up other celebrities. So you think he does. Yeah, you have to reach some medium income level or have a certain amount of a following. But apparently, celebrities sign up for these apps. That's how occasionally you'll see like Ben Simmons Kendall Jenner road trip, or sorry, Devin Booker. Whatever. She's dated a lot of basketball players. This is my point, guys. I lose track of it. She has a starting five all herself.
All I'm saying is them fake IDs, though. I mean, he could have been, like, we don't know the full details. So, I mean, he could have been Manti-Teo'd over here, catfished. Or he could have known. So, I mean, if he truly didn't know and she had a fake ID, they were going out to clubs and drinking and everything like that, and she truly catfished him, sucks to be him on that part. But if he truly knew, he needs to go to jail for that.
Yeah. I mean, there's no getting around with if they can prove intent, if they can prove that he knew what he was getting into. If he was tricked on it, then it does get into this weird gray area where it's like, how do you convict him, right? Like if by everything she's telling him that she's like the legal standard, because I do think it is crazy, because I joke about carding at the door, but is that like a thing that he should be doing? Like, is that like a standard that anyone has when they get into that kind of like interaction with someone? Because like, how many times have you went into the club and your first thought is like, hey, before, we go home and everything, can I see your ID? Probably a bit of a mood killer, right?
Little bit. And I could speak to this from experience. We did have a friend whose sister was underage and was using another friend that looked exactly like her ID. So, I mean, I could see where some of this could happen, because I've known people to use fake IDs and they actually work and they look exactly like the person, even though it's completely different. So I could see where this is in murky waters, but it's a rough thing if you were like, hey, we're about to go, but pull out that ID real quick.
Yeah, and similarly, Aris, you and I, we were at one of the bars here in town not too long ago, and we see one of our friend's younger brothers there, and I won't name who it is, but we're both at the bar, and we're like, hey, is that so-and-so's brother? Like, didn't he just graduate high school? And sure enough, he's like, hey, guys, shut up, don't tell my sister. And he's like, I got a fake ID. And so like if you were a girl, right, just walking around, you would have no idea that this dude was only 18 years old, because he's in a bar where he got past security, where they were all checking IDs anyways. So why would you ask him, hey, let me make sure you've got your ID again, when you would just assume like, hey, he already made it past the people whose job it is to check the ID.
Yeah, and if you do make it past that certain point, you have to expect probably the onus probably falls on the like institution that allowed that person in the door, right? Like a little bit of blowback.
I would think so. And that's the thing that always puzzles me, is that we put so much pressure and I guess stress on the people that committed the act, which there should be, right? As, hey, you're messing around with somebody that was underage. But at the same time, if you met them in the club, I would think that it should be the club that loses their liquor license, that loses their responsibility, their ability to operate, just because they're the ones that failed to do that secure ID check. And it's not the people necessarily inside the club whose job it is to check everybody's IDs. So I agree there should be some blowback.
Especially when you're hammered.
Do you think if Telvin Smith had no intention of it, do you think he would sue the club?
I mean,
or at least try to get something on them?
Well, I suppose that's at least a possibility, but when I think you're pushed into that corner, you're probably best not to just add press to the story, add more eyeballs on the issue as a whole. The moral of the story ultimately is it does not pay to get drunk and horny. In the words of Sublime, be careful who you're with, this is probably what. Especially
when you're an athlete or celebrity.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the biggest thing. It's like when you do reach a certain status, it's probably like best just to do yourself a favor and protect yourself, honestly.
Honestly, in the age of Me Too, I'm surprised celebrities aren't doing contracts yet. Honestly.
Yeah, just have NDAs just like by the bedside. Sorry, you didn't highlight page 4, so I don't know if we can really enter into this binding agreement here. It's like it's true. That is a valid point. Is there any sports stories we're missing, boys? What else popped up this week? We had Dan Orlovsky put out his top prospects of the last few years. He put Sam Darnold ahead of people like Kyler Murray, ahead of prospects like Lamar Jackson. Do we think that that's like completely off base? Sam Darnold was a highly touted prospect, and I do think that maybe perhaps it is a little unfair to look at Sam Darnold's career after 2 years, just given he has been with that dysfunctional franchise known as the Jets. And, well, you put a little onus on him because speaking of like taking care of yourself in the club, you probably should monitor who you're deciding to enter I don't know, like what would you call it? Tonsil tennis?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tonsil hockey is what I've always heard it. But no, it's this thing is like I've seen people getting up in arms with it because they're like, oh, but Lamar Jackson's so much better than Sam Darnold. But the key word in there was prospect. So you can always go back to like bust. Like Ryan Leaf was supposed to be like the second coming of Christ in the NFL, and he had run into some drug problems and whatnot, and he's out. I think his name was Justin Blackman, coming out of Oregon, was supposed to be the next Jerry Rice for the receivers, and he couldn't catch a break down in Jacksonville. So I think the key word there is prospect. It's just who's the best prospect coming into the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, without speaking or knowing how his career is going to end up, we would all agree that Trevor Lawrence is probably the best prospect we've seen in the last 10 years. But we don't know how his NFL career is going to go. A big part of that is going to be like, where does he end up? Lamar Jackson, he wasn't a great prospect. I mean, he wasn't. Let's face it. Like, there was questions about his ability to be a quarterback. We know how great of an athlete is. We know how great of a runner he is. But he's still a prospect in many ways as well, even coming off an MVP year, because we're still waiting to see him take that next leap. But, you know, like wasn't viewed in the same way coming out of college as Sam Darnold was as a pure quarterback. And he benefited because he went to Baltimore, and a team that decided to change their whole offensive philosophy to build around him.
Yeah, and you could look at that on the opposite side is Tom Brady as well. Tom Brady was 6th round. Nobody really thought of anything much of him. They thought he was going to be more of a developmental player, a career backup, and then he turns out to be, you know, one of the best quarterbacks to ever play in the game. So you can never know how people's career goes, especially if they go to a crap one like the Browns. Johnny Manziel was supposed to light the league on fire. He went to the Browns. You know, stunk it all up.
Look at kind of like that list a little deeper here. So, I mean, let's see. So Dan Orlovsky had it Sam Darnold, Joe Burrow, Kyler Murray, Tua, and then Lamar Jackson. Now, I guess probably my biggest thing is maybe Joe Burrow being above Kyler Murray, Tua, and Lamar. Because Joe Burrow, while he had a great season, while he set the league on fire last year, the college football NCAA's on fire, I don't know if people were really looking at him like, is the next like stud QB in the league? And there are questions about, for example, his arm strength as well. You know, so I mean, that is very well a thing in itself.
Yeah, and who was 3 again?
3 was
Kyler
Murray.
Right, and they were kind of like, you always heard the knocks on him of being short. So like, it is surprising to see him so far up there, because I felt like as a prospect, he wasn't as highly touted coming into the draft. Even though he went number 1, just because he could run Arizona's offense, I felt like he wasn't highly touted as a prospect coming into the draft.
I mean, in theory, you could say that probably even like Justin Herbert was a better prospect. You could say that, let's see, we're just going the last 2 years off of his list. Baker, you know, I'm surprised Baker wasn't up there, you know?
Yeah, even Jordan Love, people were hyping him up as a prospect as well.
Josh Allen as a prospect. I mean, Josh Allen as a prospect might even be better than Kyler. I mean, he has the size, he has the build. They're both capable runners and athletes.
Well, his knock was that he wasn't very mobile.
Well, he's clearly proven that wrong. He's a very mobile guy. He's what you would say he's a better runner than he is a thrower at this point. And, you know, as far as Kyler versus Josh Allen, you could say, well, at least Kyler is accurate. He does have a whip of an arm himself as well. I don't know. I mean, I guess you're right when you break it down through that prism of prospect. It does make a lot more sense than just off the bat of the eye.
Yeah, and I feel like it was great wording by ESPN to do the prospect, because it's driving a lot of buzz to that article now, and it's going to be a huge talking point for everybody. Get on them for hitting the word prospect on there.
I think you guys are spot on, and that's the big difference, like Aris said, is what you are as a prospect can be totally different from what you materialize when you get to the league, right? And so we've seen plenty of guys where everybody thought they weren't going to be anything, so they weren't a good prospect, and then they turn out to be amazing. And we've even seen that at other positions as well, right? Like I know Antonio Brown fell to the Steelers, and then he eventually became one of the best receivers in the league. Of course, he went crazy, and we talk about him every day on this show just because he's psycho. But he wasn't necessarily that great of a prospect coming in until he got to the league, and then everybody was like, man, that's, you know, one of, if not the best receiver in the league during a few of his years. And so I agree, the Joe Burrow one is a little bit interesting. Mostly, like you said, there is the 1 year. So I do say, yes, statistically, he's had the best quarterback season ever when it comes to college football. So in a way, you would think, okay, that helps him as a prospect. But yeah, you're right. Just the multiple stops, the never really being a starting quarterback until this past season should knock him down a little bit. So yeah, I think it is an interesting list. I would probably have to go through it to see how much I really agree with it. But the lens of prospects, I actually do think is really interesting if we go back and look at if these guys were all in the same draft, where would we draft them and who would we take over the other?
All right, guys. Well, let's see here. Dre, you want to talk about some stuff that you're working on here?
Yeah, absolutely. So something that I'm going to be working on is a series called MMA 101. So obviously combat sports is my go-to thing. I love combat sports. I do love talking everything else, football, basketball, baseball, all that good stuff, esports. But my one true passion, of course, is combat sports. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be breaking down everything you sort of need to know as far as the basics of MMA. And it's not going to be content that's already out there, right? So I'm not looking to do technique. I'm not trying to show you how to throw a punch or how to create combinations. What we're going to do is we're going to dissect those things and take a look from more of a coaching, data analysis, science perspective. So the first episode's going to actually be about weight cutting. And I think there's really interesting data and really interesting trends that we could see when it comes to athletes that cut weight and their size and build when it comes to their weight class. So I'm really excited about it. The first episode, I'm going to try to get it out here within the next week or two. I've been pretty busy at work, but I hope everybody enjoys it.
And in this next week, too, we have the debut of the 2020 Slumpbuster Fantasy Football Podcast. Now, Aris, tell us about episode 1 coming out this week, or technically episode number 18 overall, but episode 1 for the season.
Yeah, so we're just starting back up for the 2020 season. We're chugging along like everything's a normal season. This year, we're going to be breaking down everything a little bit further out because last year we kind of got a little bit later of a start. So we're going to give like some pre-rankings, and then we're going to get into, some rookie rankings, some mock drafts and stuff like that. So we're going to be starting that back up. We're going to be collabing with some other fantasy podcasts just to kind of, get the lay of the land, because everybody's going to have their different rankings. Everybody's going to like something just a little bit better than something else. So I'm excited to get started on that this year.
And then I have my own project I'm working on as well, guys. So 49 Reasons to Listen. So everyone who's listening to the show knows I'm a big-time Niners fan. I'm going to get all that out there on my own show, on my own time. That way, whenever you come to the Slumpbuster podcast, you can fully expect pure, unbiased analysis. 49 Reasons to Listen, we're kind of breaking down a different concept each week, a different topic each week. There's 49 reasons to listen, but one topic weekly. All right, closing it out, episode 43. We know it was kind of a discombobulated mess. I'm not going to lie, guys, but we also had to come together on the fly here. Everyone that was part of the show, Slumpbuster team, you get to see them contribute a little bit each week. Aris, Dre, Bobby, Christian, we all work together in different ways, and we're the people that get to bring this show and bring it out to you guys. Remember, use promo code SLUMP at Slumpbuster Podcast on IG, at Slumpbuster Pod on Twitter. Check us out on iHeartRadio, Spotify, all the good places. You know where to check for your podcast. Stay safe, happy, and healthy, and we'll be back next week.